Mr. Prime Minister, when talking about the Ukraine, you have to talk about the conflict with Russia. It seems that at the moment there's some kind of button. Mr. Putin has pressed some kind of pause button. He's busy with Syria, but is that just kind of a tactic?
Just to remind you that Russian Federation illegally annexed Crimea, sent its proxy and its military to Donetsk and Lugansk, and actually seized the part of an independent country, which is Ukraine. You're absolutely right that there is a temporary ceasefire on the ground. And I want to be very clear that every single life of human being that is saved due to the personal contribution of Chancellor Merkel. She made it possible personally. Next step is definitely to fully accomplish the Minsk deal. And this is not a cherry-pick menu. And there are key pillars of the Minsk deal. The first one is Russia to pull back its forces. The second one is that Russia to stop the supply of its proxies with the lethal and non-lethal aid. And the third one is that we are to regain control or to seal the border between Ukraine and Russia. We need to hold free and fair elections in Donetsk and Lugansk, but they are to be really free and fair, and they are to stick to ODIHR and OSCE standards and to be based on the Ukrainian legislation. And you can't hold free and fair elections under the barrel of the Russian-made gun.
What kind of sign is it that there will be no elections in eastern Ukraine this year?
Well, it depends on Russia. If they are ready to withdraw their troops, if they are ready to provide an access to the Ukrainian government to these territories, in order to provide criteria for free and fair elections, we can do it quicker. But too much depends on Russians. And you just mentioned Syria. This is a new global challenge. And Russians did it deliberately. They are professionals in creating a number of hotspots. The reason to build up a combat base in Syria and to start offensive operation is as follows. Putin wants to be upstage on the global arena. He wants to become once again a global player. And he made a very, I would say, inhuman decision to support a dictator, Bashar al-Assad. The second issue is that he fully understands the more fighter jets of Russian Federation and airstrikes Russia makes in Syria, the more refugees you have in the EU. This is the challenge for the European Union. In this way, he wants to split the EU, and it's so important for you to stay united and to find an appropriate, joint, united response to this kind of challenge. These are about the European values. And your Chancellor made a very strong statement and bold decision, and it's important for everyone in the EU to understand the challenges and to address this kind of challenges.
2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, we had a big revolution on the Maidan Place. The world looked at Kiev. But 2 years later, there seems to be some kind of disenchantment. The people think that corruption is still on the agenda. What do you think? Did you fail? Did your government fail? Did the revolution fail?
We succeeded. No one expected that this country, this nation, and this government will succeed in the last 18 months. This government deterred Russian-led terrorists. We are fighting with the Russian army. We are practically the only country in Europe who is fighting against the nuclear Russian modernized army. The second, we fixed our budgetary problems. I do remember when I was sworn into the office as a prime minister, you know the amount of cash we had on the state treasury accounts? 10,000 euros. And you know today what we got? $5 billion. We exchanged our reserves, we increased revenues for the state budget, we increased, well, I would be happy to increase more, but in the last 18 months, for the first time, we increased pensions and wages for the public officials, for the public servants, for doctors, for teachers, you know, for pensioners, from 13 to 19% as a first step. We are fighting with the corruption, and this is true, this is very important. To eradicate corruption, the key area of the corruption is concentrated in Ukrainian judiciary. And right now, there is an ongoing plenary in the Venice Commission over the model of an entire reform of Ukrainian judiciary. I will say my take. We need to replace all 9,000 Ukrainian judges. And this is the only possible chance really to tackle corruption in judiciary. We did the same with the Ukrainian police. You know, we established new Ukrainian police. We hired absolutely new folks. We trained them, and Americans and Canadians supported us with the train and equip program. And I will tell you, for example, the data. About 60% of those who subscribe to new Ukrainian police have high education. They were graduated from a number of universities. They even had a different experience. One were artists, another were entrepreneurs, and only 10% were from the former Soviet-style militia. And people are happy with this kind of real reform that tackle corruption on the streets. So we succeeded in tackling petty corruption on the streets, but a lot more needs to be done. And that's the reason why we ask, for example, the Javan government to send practitioners to overhaul Ukrainian state tax administration and customs clearance office. Because this bloody petty corruption still exists, not only in Ukraine, it even exists in Europe.
Talking about economy was one of your issues today here in Germany. What does make Germany, what does make Europe important for the Ukraine and reverse?
Ukraine is to become a success story for Europe. If we fail, this would be a disaster for the entire free world. So we together just have only one option to succeed. Germany, Ukraine, Europe, and the free world.
What's your master plan, so to say, to reform Ukraine and its economy? There's a lot to do.
Well, we've done a lot, and G7 member states, the IMF, the World Bank, they issued very clear statements that they believe that an implementation process of the reform agenda is perfect. But we need to do more and more and more. Frankly speaking, we are facing tremendous problems and challenges. My government had to pass 3 austerity packages, which are 5 times tougher than, for example, in Greece. My government has to increase utility bills by 450%. Could you just imagine what's going to happen with another European government after these kind of decisions? But it's due to the wisdom of Ukrainian people. We actually offset this kind of stuff with a large-scale program for subsidies. But this was the way how to eradicate corruption in the energy sector. No more energy tycoons in Ukraine, as we impose market-based prices and market-based governance approach in state-owned oil and gas enterprises. So the reform agenda is clear. This is DCFTA, which is to be implemented on the 1st of January, deep and comprehensive free-trade area for the viewers. The IMF program, which is not owned by, this is the Ukrainian program, not supervised, but supported by the IMF. The World Bank program, the EBRD. So more deregulation, more reforms, good governance in state-owned enterprises, more privatization, less government and less corruption.
You quoted the energy sector. What importance is it that you agreed upon with Russia to deliver gas? What importance has it for your sector, for the economy?
Well, this has an importance for all of us. Let me remind you, last year we succeeded in signing a trilateral protocol between Ukraine, EU and Russia, and an annex to the gas deal due to personal contribution of Chancellor Merkel and Commissioner Oettinger. This year, Russians refused to sign the trilateral protocol, but despite this, we managed to purchase gas from the Russian Federation in order to secure both gas transit to the European Union and to secure a gas supply for the Ukrainian consumers. But I want to be very clear. Russia is not allowed to have an upper hand over the energy policy in Europe. We strongly oppose an idea to build Nord Stream 2. This will increase the energy dependence for the European Union. This will deprive Ukraine, Slovakia, Poland of billions of dollars of the transit fees. And this will just make Russia stronger and all of us weaker. So it's important for the European Union to facilitate one strong, united energy policy. And it's important for the European Union to stick to its set energy package and not to allow anyone to violate EU regulations.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank
Prime
you.
Minister.